Good evening, and welcome to the closing event of the Nichi Bei Foundation's 10th annual Films of Remembrance series. We're celebrating with this one-of-a-kind 45th anniversary screening of John Korty's film Farewell to Manzanar, based on the memoir by Jeanne Wakatsuki Houston and James D. Houston. I'm Frank Abe. I grew up here, attending Cupertino High School and UC Santa Cruz, and going to drive-ins like this one. Tonight, you're going to have the unique experience of seeing Farewell to Manzanar, not just on the big screen, but on a drive-in theater screen. And we'll begin with a look back at the making of the film. We invited everyone we could reach, and so let's bring in some of the cast who played Jeannie's family. From Los Angeles, Clyde Kusatsu, Akemi Kikumura Yano, and Momo Yashima. Welcome, good to see you all again.
Oh, how good to be here.
You know, you three worked closest with those who are now gone in the cast. So I want to take a moment to remember the memories of Nobu McCarthy, Yuki Shimoda, Pat Morita, of course, Mako, and Mitsuyashima. I will add quickly one thing that I added in when we filmed the movie Farewell is that when Teddy leaves for the army, there's a goodbye scene. And I said to John, it's okay if I kiss Akemi? He said, yeah, oh, fine. And so I just planted a big one.
Yeah, you didn't tell me you were going to do that.
No, I didn't. Anyway, because most of the time you never saw an Asian man kiss another Asian woman or another woman on screen. It was as if Asian women were recipients or whatever, but the men were never, it was a subtle thing. Nobody really noticed.
Really, yeah.
That
was very good.
I planted one, and we were at it, and finally you could hear John going, okay, cut. cut. I said, I just wanted to make sure we had it, and they kept it in.
Well, you know, there was one thing that I wanted to add. Being a teenager, I asked for a scene where it was Nobu and myself, where Nobu was telling me, you know, Alice, I want you to eat with the family, stay with the family in the mess hall. And I look at her and I say, I just want to be with my friends. And I throw a brush at her or something like that.
I remember that scene very well, Momo, because you got that brush and you threw it, and it made me jump back.
There was one more member of the Wakatsuki family who was young Jeannie Houston. So let's bring in Dori Takeshita Chan from the Bay Area. Hello, Dori, how are you?
Good, I'm great, thanks.
So Dori, again, you were 9 years old at the time. What do you remember, what were your impressions of the filming and how the shooting went?
It was amazing. All of these wonderful people. John Korty was so kind and so nice. I was a little intimidated because I had no real experience, and everyone, I think, Momo, I must have drove you crazy. I followed her around like shadow constantly. And I think it might've been the first time I was even on an airplane, possibly. And it was in a hotel. I got to eat in a restaurant regularly. That was nice. And Tule Lake was where my mother's family was interned, and that's where we filmed, which was, my mom was there with me as my chaperone. And so that was really interesting. And I was 9, so I was learning a lot of things for the first time about the whole experience. And my mom was able to tell stories, but most of what I learned was when she would talk to the other people, the cast and the crew, and the stories she would tell them, and I would just listen. And I was able to kind of pick up on certain things, but it was a great experience.
One of the things I remember so well was, like I said, I thought I was book smart and I had done all this research, blah, blah, blah. And so we show up on the set. We're staying in the hotel and we're bussed over to the location, which was built on a corner of the camp itself. Now it had been turned into low income housing. But they got one set of barracks and they tar papered it, and then they put dirt on the cement, the stuff, and then they put up the barbed wire. When I walked out and I looked out and I saw the barbed wire and I saw Mount Shasta, I started shaking. I couldn't stop shaking because I realized the enormity of what happened to our people, that we were really behind barbed wire. There were towers with men with guns in them. And for children to have to go through that, I have to say it really changed my life.
Momo, I think so many of us who were on the set, even the Nisei who were there in different camps, they felt like they were reliving history. And it really, when you talk about it, it raises the hair on my arms. Don't have too many, but it was really quite moving, and it made me think about what the Nisei went through, the Issei and the Nisei, the first and second generation.
I want to bring in novelist Sean Wong. You were in the mess hall scene with a lot of Nisei and Issei around you. What did you feel at that moment?
I was just an extra at the time, and because they put out a call, they didn't have enough people. And so I showed up I just thought, making a movie, it's fun. And then I realized, and while we were in the scene, that some of the older Nisei that were in the scene were actually there in the mess hall at Manzanar in real life. And when John Korty and Hiro would, pause in between takes, there was this overwhelming sense of emotion coming out from the crowd. People would just be sitting there alone with their thoughts, and thinking back to the time that they were in camp. And we often, some of us in those break times would sit there and talk to the Nisei. Everybody was there. Edison Uno and writer, I think Toshio Mori was in the audience. And so we ended up sort of doing on the spot oral history. And it was, I remember one time I was standing next to Mako, and he had just done his performance, and he told me, he goes, "This is not acting." He says, "I'm getting so much feedback, so much emotion from the crowd." He said, "We're not acting anymore. We are those people."
You have 2 lines in the script. How'd you get them?
Hiro and John Korty came to me. I was just sitting there with all the other, extras, and Hiro came to me, and he said, because we had made 2 children's films together a few years ago, and Hiro came to me and says, "You want to say 2 lines?" And I go, "Oh no, I'm not an actor." I didn't want to embarrass myself. And Hiro says, "You get $172 plus residuals." And I go, "Give me the lines."
Give me the script.
$172, man. Give me the lines. I can say them. And I got to be in the scene with Nobu. So, my 2 lines, of course, I memorized them immediately because I'm a, well-trained actor. One of the lines was, "When are we going to get some sugar?" And the other is, "That's a lie." And I actually heckle Frank Abe. He's giving this sort of, conservative, Mitch McConnell, JSDL speech. And I'm supposed to cut him off and jump up and yell, "That's a lie," and start the riot. And so, but the funny thing is Frank's up there giving the speech, and I miss my cue because he's giving this great speech. I'm actually listening to it. And then because Frank is such a professional, he just keeps going. He keeps going with the speech, and he's looking at me, and he keeps going with the speech. And then I realize I missed my cue. So I jump up out of my seat and I go, "That's a lie." And then John Korty says, "Cut." And he comes over to me and he goes, "You've never acted before?" And I go, "No." He goes, "That was perfect." And he didn't know that I just jumped up out of fear because I missed my cue. So that's
You were great, Sean.
But Frank gave a great speech, you know.
The speech was hold on, Clyde. The speech was actually I rewrote the script with John's permission. I had done my own research to play the role of Frank Nishi, the JACO character, who was based on the real life character of Fred Tayama. But we forgot to tell Seth Sakai, who played Joe Takahashi, who's screaming at me from the audience about this Frank Nishi character being a collaborator. And so when he goes, "What happened? Where's my cue?" So we had to stop, and then John had to show him the lines, and Seth was muttering about Stanislavski over here, being this serious actor, and so we shot this. We shot the scene, and you jumped up and said it's a lie, and Seth had his speech, but this Frank Nishi is collaborating with the government, and then when the scene ends, he pauses, and he has these gloves in his hand, and he does his line. John says cut. He throws his gloves at me and says a-hole. Can't say the word, but and the crowd in the mess hall erupts in cheers because they're all sympathizing with Joe Takahashi. So Clyde, I wanted to play your part. I wanted to play Teddy, the oldest son.
Well, you didn't.
I didn't know, and you were better. But John Korty said, Frank, at the audition, John said, I know you wanted to play Teddy. I'm sorry, Frank, but I have this thankless role for you.
You look really good in the hospital, all bandaged up. They really messed you up, Frank.
They really did. When I'm beaten up in the latrine scene, the extras, the extras did not pull any punches. They were not. This is that big moment on screen, and they didn't know how to do stage fighting, and so they really slugged me. I was sore for days after that.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Clyde, you wanted to say something?
And just one added thing is that the work is so seminal that many of the scenes that John shot in the film, I believe were copied by in Come See the Paradise. When you looked at some of the scenes, you went, "Hey, come on, you stole that shot with the main character looking through the barbed wire and you see the mountain." That shot was iconic because of John's film. So in many respects, the film is the key for many of the other projects that's come out later. And it still remains the only film that really deals with a Japanese-American family going through the relocation camps, internment camp experience that has ever been done.
Let me go back to the extras. In the Bay Area, whenever the subject of Harold Manzanar comes up in our community, someone will always pop up and say, my cousin was an extra in the film. And to represent the extras, in addition to Sean, I wanted to introduce musician Peter Horikoshi, who was in the riot scene at night. And Peter, what do you recall about the nighttime riot scene and the mess hall scenes?
Well, in the mess hall scenes, I was able to purchase the film from Janum too. So, Clyde, you're right. It's really wonderful that they're selling that and have reproduced that. I'm looking through the crowd, and I had glasses then, as many of us did, but we were told not to wear our glasses because they were more modern. And if you look through the scene, I don't know if you've ever seen that many Asian Americans together in one place without glasses. But the riot scene, I remember it was dark outside and it was nighttime, and we were supposed to run past the truck, and so we filmed the scene. And as you say, John said, cut. And then he gathered us together and he said, can we try this one more time? But this time try not to smile as you're running by the truck. Because we're all like, oh, this is great. We're in a film and we're extras. And he says, this is supposed to be a very serious scene. You're supposed to be angry. So try not to smile this time.
You also had to throw rocks, I understand.
Oh yes, thank you, Frank, for throwing me that. In the scene where the soldiers are, we're the angry mob, and they gave us these rocks that were made out of foam rubber. And so, we're throwing these rocks and we're practically laughing because the way the rocks were bouncing, you could tell that they're foam rubber and they're not actual rocks. And if you look very closely at that scene, you can actually see some of those rocks bouncing like that.
Sean, you were there too.
Yeah, I was in a riot scene. I loved being in a riot scene. It was great. And we played so many pranks on the cameraman, and Richard Hashimoto was beside himself yelling at us. There was one time where the camera was stationary and we were supposed to run past the camera, and Peter was right. They told us not to laugh. And then he says, okay, take two. And we run past the camera and Richard Hashimoto says, cut. And he comes back to us and he goes, okay, who's the Joker wearing the Aloha shirt and a straw hat? It's supposed to be winter there. And some guy in a red Aloha shirt and a straw hat ran by the camera. And so he was mad because, you're wasting money. And then I was running with Mako. And Mako, they told us just to yell anything. And Mako started yelling phrases in Cantonese that he learned from other movies, He'd say, let's get that ham sup lo, dirty old man. And he just kept speaking in Cantonese the whole time. And then the rest of us, being products of the 60s and the 70s, we were yelling, all the expressions from the 60s, like ROTC off campus and, on strike, shut it down, ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. They didn't care what we yelled as long as we yelled. So we just yelled all this anti-Vietnam stuff.
Well, the nighttime riot scene was one of the highlights of the film, and photographing that was our cinematographer, Hiro Narita. Welcome, Hiro. What were the challenges of lighting a huge nighttime scene like that?
At the time, I was not a really experienced cameraman, and I was going more for impressionistic images rather than realistic, even though the film itself was a docudrama, as real as we can capture. But that particular scene, because of the situations, trying to hide the background, the cityscape, and the fact that it's a riot scene, I try to keep it as simple and keep that blackness as is, which I thought helped create the sort of sense of violence. I have to tell you, I really didn't have a clever scheme. I just had to live with what we got. And in the end, it came out quite effective.
Well, you did a great job and made us all look good.
Oh, well, thank you.
To close our reunion, we should consider the legacy of the film, as Clyde mentioned. And Louis Kawahara retired from the College of San Mateo, where he directed the APA Film Festival. He's also Dori Takeshita's brother-in-law. Louis, what do you see as the legacy of Farewell to Manzanar, the film?
It's sort of interesting that this keeps coming around in a circle, in a full circle. It's sort of a good reminder for us that we have to, make sure that people understand that things like happened in World War II with Japanese Americans could happen again, and it is happening again in 2021.
Jeanne Houston also sends her regrets. She wishes she could join us. I spoke with her last month, and she sounds in good health and good spirits down in Santa Cruz. It was really Jeanne's courage that in sharing her journey with us that led to the book and the movie. So on behalf of the Nichi Bei Foundation, I want to thank Jeanne for her book and her film, for making it possible to see her story tonight. I want to call on each of you finally for your final words, just final thoughts. Clyde Kusatsu?
Yes. As Lewis has said, yeah, it is unfortunate. It is sad. We have to keep remembering this. But you know what? It has to be what it has to be. My God, that's why we have the Days of Remembrance for the Holocaust, the Days of Remembrance of those the braceros who came to the United States from Mexico and were treated harshly. And that's why we have now the great movement of the indigenous tribes in our country, where people are beginning to understand it's not Indians, because Indians was a name given by Columbus because of where they wanted to go. But these were truly the native indigenous tribes of this country and are beginning to see their due and acknowledgement. So just as anything, it is a perpetual motion machine that needs to always be rewound and reminded for everyone.
Akemi?
I think we should never forget. We should always remember. And the people who really lived through it, Frank, you were saying it was 45 years ago? I go, oh my God, that long ago. And at that point, there are very few Issei alive at that time. And today, when you go in front of an audience and you say, how many of you were in camp or remember the camps and lived through the camps, very few hands are up from the Nisei. So I think we have to remember so that we don't repeat that history, of incarcerating people without due justice, due process. And this is a theme that keeps coming up in our history, as we know, as we put on the television and listen to others in our country and the world, for that matter. So I'm glad we're talking about this. I'm glad that Kenji is going to show this film, because I haven't seen it too often on TV, or only with special screenings. So let us not forget, and let us remember. Let us pay homage to people like Sue Embry, and I have to mention her name because she's the one. She was there on the set as an advisor, and she's the one who started the Manzanar pilgrimage. And James Houston, Jeanne's husband, who worked along with her to get that book, Farewell to Manzanar, out and into the hands of young and old alike. And so thank you all for being here today. And I know you're going to be, some of you will be at the screening, right? In the drive-in? Well, see you there.
Thank you, Kemi. Dory Chan.
I'm so happy that the screening is available, the DVD is for people to see, and maybe new audiences. And I'm so proud to be part of this film. And I'm glad that everyone will be able to see it and enjoy it and learn and share with this next generation.
Peter, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was only on the set for one day, and in looking at the film again, it's really well done, really did tell our story, and really was a groundbreaking film. And like others have said, never again. I think it in these times, it calls us to act to try to make sure that it doesn't happen to anyone else again. So thank you.
Hiro, any final words?
Well, I think to me, the success of the film kind of sums up in the scene where Ko, played by
Yuki Shimoda.
Comes out of the bus when he is sent back to Manzanar. I don't know if you remember that particular scene where John, I don't know who decided, either John or Yuki, they didn't want to rehearse the scene. as Yuki comes out of the bus. I think we wanted to capture his reaction in real time. No rehearsal, nothing. What's on his face will be. I mean, what reaction he would have when he sees that Tule Mountain Tule Lake, where he was incarcerated as a kid. So we didn't do any rehearsal as he comes out of the bus. It was one take. And the wide shots was done several times, but that expression really sums up what the whole film is about. And I think it's the marriage between reality and drama really merge and becomes very successful storytelling.
And Sean Wong.
Thank you. I'm glad Kemi mentioned James Houston as well. At the time when the novel came out, as a writer too, it's important to note that there were almost no Asian American books in the 70s published. You could probably count them on one hand. And so it was a very pioneering work as a literary work to have Jeanne and James Houston bring that work out, and I'm glad that it got the attention that it deserves, and and as a book, as a text, it's still getting attention. It's still used in the schools, and so we're assured that the story will last for a long time, and I think that's every writer's dream, is that their work exists long after they're gone too.
Thanks, Sean. Well, thank you all. It was really good to see you all again. For our viewers who want to read more, Barbara Narita's journal that she kept on location and the photos she took are online at densho.org. Just search for Farewell to Manzanar.